All right, it is Thursday, September 5th, 2019. We've just passed the rollover, 5 o'clock rollover. And we're going to do a quick update, and I'm going to show you the trades that I've called out in the chat room. Again, currently, for those of you who are interested in the chat room, currently I have two sessions. I have the London session and then the New York session. New York session starts at 7 a.m. New York time to 1 p.m. And then the London session starts at 2 a.m. until the 7 o'clock, which is the New York session. So currently, the London session is available for my beta program coaching students. And the beta program is a 6 weeks online one-on-one coaching. It's actually a semi-group environment, but you also get one-on-one Skype sessions with me. You can schedule them. So the 6-week program is, it started last week, so it's not too late to jump into it right now. You would be right up to speed. You get my entire online course, and you get to learn with me in again, a group setting, and then also private one-on-one Skype sessions. So I teach you my strategy, and I teach you how to put together. I work with you together with your the amount of time that you have available to trade, and we build some kind of a trading system that's going to make sense so that you can execute, right? If you're working a full-time job, it might be a little bit frustrating for you to come back home or wake up early and try to catch some of these trades. So we build a system that's going to allow you the opportunity to get multiple trading opportunities throughout different sessions. So I'm going to show you the two sessions, why it's so important. But the reason that I split off the two London session and the New York session is that I needed a specific session to put my beta program coaching students into the chat room exclusively just for them, because they paid a lot more to get into this coaching program, and I've got to give them more, right? They're paying to fast track their results is really what it comes down to. They're paying to get access to me on a regular basis, to talk to me on Skype one-on-one. So it's very much a very a personalized experience. The coaching. It's not just a group with here's an online course. Have at it. I don't do things like that. I know that it's really important that you be there with me to trade with me. So you get access to the chat room. Right now, you can either just get the chat room membership, which is the New York session, or you can join the beta program and get both sessions. Now, September 16th, though, even if you just want the chat room, September 16th, you're going to get both the London and the New York session. And the reason that I'm doing that is that by September 16th, my beta program coaching students should be up to speed, and then they'll be able to understand everything that I'm doing anyway in the chat room. So it's a pretty good environment and setup for them. So some of the trades that I called out in the chat room started at the London session. I'm going to show you two of those, and then another trade developed during the New York session. So depending on your work schedule and depending on where you live, again, we can customize the trading system. And this happens and all takes place in the beta program. We customize a trading plan that allows you to trade whichever session you have time to trade. There are some opportunities as well during the Asian session, and they're different strategies, or somewhat slightly different strategies that I use for the Asian session. Now, things move in cycles, so I want you to remember this. First of all, the way that I trade is very susceptible to the cycles that take place. The cycles are there regardless. I have nothing to do with them. It's just the way the market moves. So sometimes I get maybe some continuation breakout trades during the Asian session, and then sometimes I don't. And then it'll sort of circulate through, and I get the breakouts during the London session, and sometimes I don't. And then sometimes the really good trades are during the New York session. It really depends. It depends on what kind of economic data is available and how susceptible the market is to paying attention to that particular report, because you've got interest rate cycles, you've got money cycles, business cycles, you've got these different cycles, and with these different cycles, different reports have more weight, and they have the tendency to, depending on the news, to have an impact on Fed policy, which would be interest rate policy, right? So we know that some reports we're not going to pay attention to so much in certain cycles, and then others we will. So that's the cycle. That's how it works. And again, if it's New York, let's say we're looking at the dollar. So if we're looking at the dollar and we're expecting the Fed to cut rates or raise rates, then maybe it's going to be a little more active during the New York session. as opposed to, let's say, if it was the UK or the Eurozone that seemed to be getting all the attention. So you get my point. And then sometimes it's Japan, and that's why some of those things will work in cycles. And then there's also political events. Political events also take precedence, and the attention will be drawn to some of those sessions based on some of those political events as well. So anyway, with these cycles, we can adjust the trading plan for you. A lot of the trades that we've had during the London Open for the beta program coaching students have taken place here on the pound dollar and the pound yen. So that is obvious, right? The London market open, we're looking at anything that's got anything to do with economics there in the UK and political positioning with Brexit. So again, it shouldn't surprise anybody that we get some really good choice opportunities during the London Open, which is, again, the chat room session that I trade with my coaching students for the beta program. We had another trade here, another breakout trade on the pound yen. I'll open this up. This was not likely to go to the 250 pip target that we normally trade it on the breakouts. And I'll explain a couple of reasons why. And this is something that I want you to know, that if you're following along with my trading system, there are specific rules when I get these setups that I have to follow. I have to be aware of the market environment, the time. I got to say, what time is this happening, right? This is obviously happening during the London Open, so we're going to see a little more activity. But I've got to be realistic with my take profit levels. I've seen video after video on Facebook and YouTube where these trading coaches will immediately just say, if you sell, it's going to come all the way back down here to the nearest major support, and or the opposite direction to resistance. And it doesn't always work that way, and you can't tell people that. Like, you've got to be careful. You have to take profits. You're here if you're day trading. This is the way I look at it. And I tell my coaching students this. You've got to take profits. If we're sitting here trading for 8, 9, 10, 12 hours, we've got to get paid. There's money here. So with this trade here, the pound yen set up during the at the London Open when we got into the chat room. This was our breakout trade. So this was an entry of 130.89, and we traded it to 50, which was the final target. So I'm going to trade it to psychological levels. There were other targets that some of my coaching students held to, which was 80, but we're getting in at 90 approximately, and we're closing at 50 approximately. So we earned 60 pips on this one, and it looked at that point like it was starting to slow down with these candles here. So I closed my trade in the chat room. I said that I was flat at 131.50. That was where I got out. Now sometimes obviously it's going to go a little bit further, but you can't be a stingy fool and try to hold out for every single last pip. Sometimes you can calculate it, and sometimes it's just a really good idea to lock in some profits. This is a 60-point move. I'm trading standard lots. That's a big move. So we also had a breakout during the London session yesterday and the day before, and this one paid 200 pips just to that resistance level there. So it works over and over again, but what I'm getting at is one of the other reasons why I pay attention to some of these targets, and I'm not expecting this another 250-point move or a 200-point move, is that really wouldn't be all that realistic. That wouldn't be, it would be irresponsible for me to expect another big blow up. It could happen, but it wasn't likely based on why price was moving today anyway. So a lot of people will say, just read the charts, read the charts, read the charts. Well, I'm reading the charts, but I'm also taking into consideration the market environment, how the market's reacting to tweets, comments, political statements. We have to take that information into consideration. Economic data is going to help set the direction or the expectations of price being high or low or some kind of reevaluation in these currency pairs. It's just a fact. That's what is going to help the banks and the central banks make these decisions on interest rate policy, right? We get these big moves when Mario Draghi makes a comment about whether or not they're going to support the market or they're going to cut rates or raise rates, and the same thing here in the United States. I mean, this goes all the way back to when I started trading. It was Greenspan. So this goes all the way back. I mean, Trichet, they had the ability to move price based on their comments and the expectation of interest rate hikes or cuts, and how they were going to support the markets. That has an impact on price. And that's what we need to be following along, and that's what I also teach. We're looking at that data, we're looking at that information. So we pull all of this information together, and based on what I could see today, it really wasn't likely to go that far. But here's the other thing, from a technical level, if we've had multiple continuation breakout trades, and this continuation breakout trade is a strategy that I put together. So I teach this strategy in the chat room, and you also get access to the online course so you can learn it. But I talk about it in the chat room all day long. So when we get a continuation breakout trade, if we've had multiple continuation breakout trades in this uptrend, eventually, when I get another one, I've got to ask myself, well, where did all of this really come from? Have there been numerous or previous continuation breakout trades, and have they all hit their final targets? And if they have, eventually, I'm going to get into, or there's a possibility that I could get into a continuation breakout trade, and it's likely to reach a major resistance that you can't see here on the 1 hour time frame, but it might be pretty obvious on a 4 hour or daily. So just being prepared with that one thought in mind, that when I get into a trade, I'm going to say, well, where did all of this come from? Has there been a trend in place? Has there been numerous breakouts? Have they all hit their targets? And could price start to slow down and maybe not hit another 250 pip target? And at that point, I would be a little more careful here as we get into areas of resistance on the larger time frame. And again, taking into consideration the activity that was going on politically, I wasn't expecting another 250 point move. So this one paid 60 pips. This was the pound yen. This was the pound dollar, and this one paid, let me take a look at our total here, 37 pips on the pound dollar. So these took place again during the London session. Again, if you join just the chat room alone, you're going to be in the New York session until September 16th, and then September 16th you get access to both sessions. If you want access to the London session now and the New York session, you would need to be a member of the beta program. Sorry, I'm getting some kind of alert on my phone here. So being a member of the beta program, I apologize, that's really bad timing. So you would have access to both sessions. Again, if you just want to wait if you want to join now, you can lock in your rate for the chat room because the price will increase on September 16th. It's going to go up to $179 a month. But if you get in now, of course, you can lock in the rate and you won't have to pay $179 a month, and you'll get both sessions. So again, this one paid 37 pips, and then we get another wave of opportunities. I'm going to go over here to some more trades that developed during the New York session. So with the New York session, we had a reversal here on the euro dollar, and this one is paid, already hit its first target right here with an entry of 51. The first target was 31. Initially, I was using a target of 20, but it looks like price is starting to slow down. And when I was in the chat room, I mentioned the next time it drops down to 31, that's it. I'm going to lock in the first half of the trade here at 31, and then if it continues, I've got it set at a break-even stop. And if it drops, then I would trade it either to the 20 or the 00. And possibly anywhere in between there. And I would set a price alert as it approaches the 20, and then that way I can more or less, I'm hands-on at that point. In other words, I can make the decision if price starts to move around a little bit more than it has over the last few hours, and it picks up more momentum, I could maybe perhaps trade it through the 20 and then close the trade out there. 20 is the target, and then the next target is the 00. If it hits that target, that wouldn't be a bad trade either. From 51 to 20, that's approximately 30 pips. So that's not a bad trade. And we've already locked in the first half of the trade. Profits there at 31, which is 20 pips. So we've already earned 20 pips there. So far for the day, we've earned 117 pips so far. And this one isn't done. I'm not trading the pound dollar just yet after the London trade and where it hit its take profit levels. Through the New York session, it was more or less going sideways. So I really didn't have much of an opportunity to take any type of trade here, and I expected that it was going to continue to go sideways. So again, right now, the only one that we have remaining that's still open at this point is the euro dollar reversal. And again, it's already hit its first target for 20 pips, and it may continue. Now, when I say I scale out, this is a very important part of my trading strategy and my system. These techniques are one thing, but where I take profits is another. It's very important, and I learned how to do this back in 2001. It was a critical mistake that I was making, not knowing where to scale out at different locations. I hired a professional psychologist who worked with traders. It was expensive, but well worth it. I was losing lots of money. I was trading standard lots. I was trading 5 standard lots every time I would open up a trade. This was back in 2001. So you can already guess where I'm going with this story. I would lose thousands of dollars a week and tens of thousands of dollars in a month. I had a big trading account. I sold a business before I got into trading. So I was fortunate, but stupid. And I don't recommend doing it, but it certainly taught me a lesson, and I got burned fast, and I hated the pain of losing money and not knowing if I was going to be able to replace that money. It was horrible. I know a lot of people that start off with about $25,000, $15,000, $50,000 in their trading account, and even that's bad when they start, trading standard lots and they have losses with just one standard lot. I was trading 5 standard lots, so it was a mess. So it was critical that I hired this individual. And one of the first things they asked me, they didn't help me build my trading system, but they helped me get my head straight, my mindset right. One of the first things they asked me if I was scaling out of my trades. And I remember thinking to myself, but I answered them quickly, but I thought, and I even mumbled it, I'm just taking one trade, to one target. Like, I'm not trading big. I'm not holding on throughout the day or the night or the week. I'm just, I want to get in and out. And they said it doesn't really matter. Any trading system, any professional, anybody that they've ever worked with that's ever produced money and has traded funds for others and investors, they scale in and scale out, or if they get in, they have ways to scale out. So if they get in with just one and they don't scale in, they definitely scale out. And they told me that I immediately need to figure out where I could find different locations that would keep me safe and profitable in case some of these trades don't actually reach their final targets. So scaling out, one of the first things I tell my coaching students is that if you're used to just trading, let's say, one mini lot, and that's your max, that's what you're comfortable with, or one standard lot, and that's your max, and that's all that you're comfortable with, you don't want to go any higher than that, then I recommend cutting that one standard lot in half, or that mini lot in half, and then open up 2 positions when we get into this trade at the entry. That way you can close the first trade at the first target. Once it hits the first target, then I move the stop loss to a break-even stop loss. I cannot move the stop loss to a break-even stop until it hits the first target. It's already hit the first target, so now we've locked in profits on the first half of the trade, the first open position. That's done. That's closed. We have earned 20 pips. But now the stop loss has been moved down to the break-even stop. So if the second open trade, the position, that lot, if it doesn't hit the final target and it goes back up to the break-even stop, then it just closes at 0. But if it continues and it drops, then we get the opportunity to earn even more. That typically happens in a normal market environment, but we are looking at an uptrend, so who knows at this point where it's going to go, right? We don't know if it's going to drop any lower than that first target. That's how I recommend, if you're going to use my trading system, we do it. So I call out these trades in the chat room, and I explain exactly what it is that I'm doing. And when I started scaling out of these trades, it changed everything for me. Like, even if I had a trade that didn't necessarily hit some of the final targets, I still locked in money. It kept me in the game. It boosted my confidence. I was looking at my account growing. Some trades obviously only hit the first target, so it was a small gain. And then the other times when it would hit that second target, it was a big gain. And I could just continue to repeat and repeat and repeat over and over and over again. So you'll notice that this one's a bigger difference. This is obviously printing a bigger reversal, the euro dollar, than the pound dollar. And I was asked the question afterwards, how did I know to select this one and sell the euro dollar as opposed to the pound dollar when it reached the high and then sort of bounced and went sideways? I said that right away, that it looked like it was probably going to pull back to that level that it broke out of and then just go sideways. I was expecting and would like to see a deeper retracement if I was going to go long, but it doesn't necessarily have to. So watching it go sideways, I just stayed away from it. I could tell that it was going to go sideways at that point. And there was different indicators that I'm using to determine that. The key factor for me was that there's a big shift in what has happened this week in the pound. And I think it initially, at the beginning of the week, it surprised a lot of people. It continues to trend, and you can see that there would be some further resistance levels that it could potentially trade to, but it's likely that it's going to stop at certain points along the way. So once it broke above that 2-week high this morning, at that point, I usually expect some kind of a retracement, and then I wait and then I watch price to see how it's moving anyway. it wasn't likely, because there wasn't any economic data that would affect this one, where on the next candle after it broke out above that high, that it was just going to take off another 50 pips. That wasn't likely to happen. What was likely to happen was nothing was going to affect it at that point when the next candle opened up, and it was likely to pull back to the level that it broke out of, which is exactly what it's doing. It's sitting right there at that resistance level, which is now acting as new support. Now, it might dip lower later, but not right now, and I'm not in the trade, and I'm not going to look at it until I'm convinced that this is a high, and that if I sell it, it's going to reach some of the expected targets. This was very, very different. This was breaking out above a high and then a pullback, and then I just watched. And again, with some of these indicators, I could tell that it really wasn't going to go too much further. So the euro dollar, the price structure is very different on the euro dollar, and it's not moving as far, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's the only reason why. With this one, I could clearly see that there was going to be a significant reversal, so that if I was going to sell it, I could expect price to at least reach the first target, if not maybe the second target. Otherwise, I can't take the trade. If it doesn't look like there's enough momentum on the reversal for it to hit any of my targets, then there's no point in me taking the trade. I just wait it out. So again, 117 pips so far today. If this one reaches the 20, we would maybe add on another 10 pips. If it reaches the 00, then it would be another 30 pips to the total. Right now it's 117 as it stands. I haven't traded the dollar yen yet, but the dollar yen is something that I'm going to talk about a little bit later. It has printed some solid, so all week and late last week I was talking about the yen weakness that I could see on the Japanese yen futures. I trade futures as well, and I use the same system. I teach this in the chat room. I teach it in my trading course. So I use the same system to trade futures, and I'm using Japanese yen futures to gauge the strength or the weakness of the yen, and that allows me to trade the dollar yen with almost 100% confidence every time I take the trade. So I explain and teach how to do that. I'll talk about that though in the next update, and we'll take a look at the Japanese yen futures and the daily candles here once we get those set and they've printed a completed closed daily candle, and we'll take a look at the larger time frames. So right now it looks like, you know, it's sitting here again right around the 31 level again, tapping right into it. It already hit it a few hours ago, but again, we've got another level of 20. I would set a price alert. If it hits 20 and your hand's on and it goes through it, you could probably squeeze out a little bit more, or you could just leave it at the break-even stop and let it do its thing and see if it comes back down there to the 00. I would probably just close at 20. Again, we are in an uptrend, and there's no really telling where it's going to stop. It could work, but you want to get paid. Again, this is about getting paid. If you're day trading, we need to get paid and then reset and then start again the next day, right? We're going to be looking for another opportunity. It happens every day. I can't say that I get a trade every single day, and I can't make 100 pips every day. There are some days that I make 20 pips. There are other days that I make 3 or 4 or 500 pips in a single day. It depends on what the market is doing and whether or not it's going to give me the opportunity to take those trades. And obviously there are multiple trades, and I am not double counting. Whenever I call out and say that, you know, we've made 117 pips, it doesn't matter if we put 2 lots on the trade. I'm not double counting here. It's from the entry to the final target. Case in point would be the trade here on the dollar pound yen. Again, if we're going to take advantage of these 2 different profit targets here, there's 2 lots opened, but from 90 to 50, that's 60 pips. But the first lot closed from 90 to 20, that's 30, right? And then the second lot went to 50, so that's 60. 60 and 30 is 90. Effectively, there's 90 pips in here with the 2 lots that we're trading. But I don't count it that way. I count it as from the entry to the final target, 60 pips. And I want to be as transparent as possible. That's the other reason why I do it. I learned, so I got really agitated when I went to websites back in 2001, and I was looking for people to help me trade. And I was finding some of these signal services. And what I didn't realize at first was that I would go to these sites and they would say, oh, we made like 380 pips today on the euro dollar. And then I would go and look at the euro dollar and I would think, I was trading the euro dollar today and it only moved like in a 30 pip range. How did they make 300 and something pips? That's impossible. I couldn't figure it out. And then what I figured out was that they're taking multiple micro lots, and they're taking like 10, 15, 20 of them and then closing them at different locations and then adding all of those up. And I thought that was really deceiving. I didn't like that. So I don't do it. I don't double count. I know that we've got 2 lots in here, and effectively you could be earning more than just the 60 pips. But I don't count it that way. From the entry to the final target, that's the way I count it. If it doesn't hit the final target, but it just hits the first target, that's all I'm going to count. I'm going to count it as a 30 pip trade. So you get my point. The totals that I'm giving you are true and accurate from the entry to the final target. But we do scale out at these different locations, and it's safe. It's important to scale out, especially under these conditions. So that's it. I'm going to wrap it up here. Taking a look at the pound dollar. I'm not going to do anything with it just yet. But again, so we'll take a look in the next video. We'll take a look at the daily time frames and the Japanese yen futures.